Hello, welcome to Emerald Meadows, your RC YouTube channel. Today we're going to finish the series. This is part 3 on the Archon, using the Home Depot pink foam for the fuselage. Today we're going to finish it off. We're going to attach the wing and apply the electronics. I've already attached the motor. We're going to talk about how I did that in a minute, and then we're going to apply the electronics. Before we continue, the first thing we need to look at is where is the positioning of the wing. Now, for rule of thumb, we want to position the wing so that it actually is the fulcrum for the center of gravity for the plane. I put 2 dots on the wing. That represents the thickest part of the chord of the wing, which is normally where we want to start measuring our center of gravity. So I've just kind of loosely placed on the battery and the receiver. The motors that I'm going to use is already there. We'll talk about that in a minute. And right now I'm just going to, I've already played with it a bit so you can see where I positioned the battery. It looks like we have a good center of gravity. If we move the battery back a bit, you can see that it's now tail heavy, and you can probably still fly it, but it will be a little bit more of a challenge. So I'm just putting in now where basically I want to put my my battery and wing. I could also move my wing back and forth. I think that's probably a fairly good location there. It gives me good distance for my battery. So that's where we're going to place our wings. Now we're going to add the supports for the wing. What I use this doweling I get from Home Depot. That's my favorite store of choice. How big is this doweling? I think here this here is quarter inch doweling, or looks like it's 7 to 8 millimeters. So this is the doweling that I use. I use my handy standy skewers from the dollar store to poke a hole right through the foam. And then I use my drill to kind of core it out, because if you just force the stick in, it's going to push the foam up and it could rupture or cause the foam, the pink insulation to break. So I just drill in there, get out any excess. And then I use the quarter-inch dowel here with that I sharpened in a pencil sharpener. Poke that through, and that's how I get my support. My wing supports in, balance on both sides. Now another modification that I made from Experimental Airlines plane is I use this here. Pieces of aluminum. This is a floor transition piece of aluminum that I also get from Home Depot. It's used for store treads, and you can see some around the edge of this table here. So it's an edging or a transition piece used for countertops. So it's very small. It's pieces of aluminum. You buy them in I don't know, 4-foot lengths or whatever length I bought it in, and I cut it to size. What I found is with Ed's Experimental Airlines design, without these supports, let me just move this over here. What I found is that these here 2 wing supports would pull in on each side here, especially for his design, which was just hollow tubing. So after a little bit of wear or even one hard landing, you'd actually rupture the fuselage. So this actually, when we put our elastic bands that loop over here from there to there, these little pieces of metal will keep these wing supports from collapsing in on themselves. So that's a modification that I made. We'll glue those on. The other thing I've done that I think is pretty handy is the motor mount. Now, if you look carefully, this is a metal motor mount. I just put on an old motor here. I think it still works. I figured we'd give it a shot. It's an old 450 Park Flyer from Hobby King. What I used for my motor mount was simply a piece of this deck strapping that I also get from Home Depot. It already has a nice big hole in there for the motor shaft to slide in. And all I did was I bent that in my vise, okay, to create a little U-bracket right here. And then I had to screw holes, drill holes into the back to put the motor screws through. And I just used one of the motor mounts that come with most of your motor packages as a template. And then I drilled 4 holes in there so that I could mount my motor. Bent it on 90-degree angles, put little slits in the fuselage and slid it in. And on the top here, you notice that there's holes in this metal. I located those holes, and then I put in some pieces of doweling. I'll put in something more permanent once we get to the final design mix to actually keep the shaft from sliding out. So those are a couple of the modifications that I've done. Now, as we proceed, I have servos for the elevators and rudder. We have the standard D-Trim 30 amp speed controller with the Hobby King Orange RX with the satellite port. As mentioned before, if you're using a satellite port, please use it. If you don't, you only have a park flyer with very limited range. So now we're going to, now that we've put our wing supports on, we're actually going to start. I'm going to cut out the foam here. This is where the battery's going to go, and I'm going to tape on the speed controller wherever I think is convenient. And as I said, we didn't run the wires here. We're actually going to tape. We're going to put the servos on the back on the elevator and rudder, and I'm just going to tape the wires right down the side. Now that we're coming up to the end of part 3, I thought I would explain some of the things that we've done to bring it to closure. One of the things I've done is I've mounted my servos for my horizontal and vertical stabilizers. If you notice here, I simply glue them right onto the vertical stabilizer on both sides. Okay, I find that for this type of model, I have done a few where I've dug out the foam and put the servos right into this mount. You can do that if you want, but for a quick build, it's easier just to mount them straight on. There's 2-sided tape that holds the servo in place, and then I finish it off with a touch of hot glue. As in my previous builds, I've put on the aluminum transition supports in order to make sure that the wing the elastics on the wing don't pull these two support dowels together, weakening the fuselage. And you've noticed here I put some tape. I'm just going to finish that off by putting in tape along here to cover up the wires on the side. It may not be the prettiest, but for a quick build, this works really well. Simply just laying some of this blue tape and give it a bit of aerodynamics and to cover up the wires over here on the side. As I said, in my other models, I'd actually left a room. If you saw part 1, I actually cut a channel out for all my other models. I cut a channel out on the inside piece of the, remember there's 4 pieces of foam that are glued together. I left the channel in one of these inside bars, and then I moved the wires right out up to the battery compartment up ahead. This is where the battery compartment is now. One of the things that I did wrong in part 1, and I'll put a note there, is you should really cut these. I don't have a tool to dig into this foam, so it was a real bugger trying to get this cleaned out. In my other models, I've actually cut this little notch out before I glued them together. It was easier just to cut it out at that point with an X-Acto knife. But this is the battery compartment. I've mounted the ESC 2-sided tape onto the side. Here's my Hobby King receiver. Here are the leads for my ailerons at that point, which brings makes it pretty much complete. I've put the screws here into the top and bottom to support the motor mount from moving. I've guessed on the downward thrust, but because of this metal bracket, the top bracket isn't screwed in, so I can move that up and down to give myself downward thrust, which is important for this type of model. The battery sits in here quite nicely, and it will fit into the leads. I put on glued on two Velcro in order to hold the battery in place, so that when it's flying upside down, the battery won't come out. It probably wouldn't come out anyway because it's a pretty snug fit, but a little bit of Velcro there isn't going to hurt. Make it a little bit more stable. Now the wing goes on quite easily. I use 4 elastics. This aileron go underneath that one strut, so that I don't put them over here. I put them under the one strut. And I use, for this, I'll just use 2 elastics, but normally I'll have 4 or more elastics holding my wing in place. And there we go. And then I feed my aileron cables into my receiver. They just plug in. It doesn't matter what side that they're plugged into. They'll work on in either one of, when you're using a Y cable, they'll work on either side. So no, I didn't know that. Maybe I should have, but they'll work on either side. There we go. She's all set to go. We'll turn on the radio, which is, I'm using a Turnigy 9XR, one of my favorites. I have a new Tyrannus. I'll be doing some videos on the Tyrannus because I've worked out some of the problems I've had, and I thought I'd share that with others. Archon 1, plug in my battery. Okay, and let's check out all our surfaces. Aileron's working fine. I've noticed that my rudder moves with my ailerons. I find that for turning for this type of model, I mix my elevator, my rudder with my ailerons, and I give myself a 10% deflection on my elevator to just make those turns a little. I find them a bit nicer when I use them. Elevators are working well, and the motor's on. So this ends the build, the foam build on the Archon. I hope you enjoyed these videos. Do try it. Again, go to Experimental Airlines and get the Armin wing. Great wing, no need to repeat that. But I do believe that this fuselage is superior, and it doesn't weigh any more than the hollow tube, and it's much sturdier fuselage. Enjoy. Subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time at the Emerald Metals channel. Goodbye.